Tinkerbell, the Blue Fairy, Cosmo, Wanda, Toot Toot, Black Francis, Navi, Maeve, Oberon, Sprites, Sylphs, Puck. I said Puck. It's from a Shakespeare play? Really? Okay, great. Let's talk about pixies. This video is going to be a little bit different than normal. While I am going to talk about pixies as a playable race, I do also want to focus on the ability of playing tiny-sized creatures versus focusing on the Fae in general. I think there's a lot of good Fae creatures out there, but we can talk about those across multiple videos, and I think they're all kind of unique enough that we need to actually break those down separately. So we will be talking about this more as a tiny-sized creature, and I think that's really more unique to pixies than most others. Plus, they can fly, which is pretty awesome for tiny folk, and they get free magic, which to me more than makes up for their lack of being a large-sized creature, because in reality, this is probably the one time I'm not going to tell you to play this as a large-sized creature, unless you really wanted to play a large-sized pixie. I could see an argument for it. No, I'll stick to my guns this time. Definitely not a large-sized creature. Unless... No, there could be an argument made for a small creature, but, I mean, that's just making you the same size as a goblin, and I don't like that. I think pixies should be much, much smaller. Huh. This is oddly one time that I don't agree with the Pathfinder rules. Something weird is going on. Pixies are scattered throughout our mythos and legends. These winged tiny folk spend their time avoiding humans and crows alike. Wait, why do they not like crows? Do crows eat them? Do Tengu and pixies have a natural, enemy situation going on? Maybe crows just prefer more of an Arcade Fire or Modest Mouse, indie rock, broke pop, post-punk, sound, style genre. This joke got way too meta. Neutral Milk Hotel. While they may not be as powerful as some of their other Fae counterparts, yeah, they do have an innate magic that they use greedily to grow gardens and flowers to feed their nectar addictions and steal the occasional horse or pony, finding their place in the gardens and forests of the world built for creatures much larger than themselves. Did I mention that they have pixie dust? We'll come back to that later. The only other thing to talk about is the difference between fairies and pixies across the tabletop RPGs really is just their size and color. Pixies are smaller and usually have more of an insect-like wings, but with the Fae and the fairies in particular being as varied as they are, I'm not going to worry about the semantics in that. The original Swedish being pixies being small fairies is enough for me to not worry about the never-ending war between the fairies and the pixies in D&D. And yeah, how about them apples? That exists, but another story. Let's talk about the stats. In Pathfinder, pixies have a -5 to strength, a +4 to dexterity, and a +2 to charisma. And that sounds horrific, but really what it is they have a bonus. They have a bonus to charisma and the small negative to strength, but the rest of the strength and dex divisions comes from them being a small or tiny creature. I would also say that they could be a tiny or diminutive creature, and that really wouldn't change all that much. At the end of the day, I doubt many people are playing pixies for their martial beefiness. You could be though. I don't know. That might be your thing. I mean, I guess if you wanted to run an Attack on Titan campaign and just gave everybody little box cutters, that could be a thing. Martial beefiness. Not saying that a pixie riding a hummingbird with a lance wouldn't be dope as hell. Actually, I am saying that. That's super dope. Try it out. Pixie with a hummingbird lance. Wait. Yeah, whatever. For 5th edition, they basically don't talk about the size variations at all and just roll with a -4 to strength, a +5 to dexterity, and a +2 to wisdom and charisma. As a monster, they usually just roll with 1 HP, which could be a really fun way to play the game. Unlimited use of greater invisibility, but if you get hit once, you explode. Did we just turn D&D into a 2D side-scroller? I have to look for those mushrooms, I guess. Maybe we should let the HP do its thing based on the class, but otherwise, you're just bouncing off Goombas left and right. And yes, I did say greater invisibility. Pixies are supposed to be physically weak via strength, negatives, or really low hit points. But with their height being somewhere between 4 inches and 2 feet, that's 10 to 60 centimeters, they basically are relying on their wings and their innate magic to keep them alive in a world full of minotaurs and furbolgs. The magic, mixed with their 30-foot fly speed, allows them a huge amount of mobility and control over situations that, if gifted to a medium or larger sized creature, would make them ungodly to deal with in most situations. This is one of the reasons I suggest you make them tiny or diminutive, because then even if they get an enlarged person spell cast on them, they are only going up to tiny or small instead of medium or large. Mixing all these things together is really why their size is so important for the balancing of the character, for the race in general. So let's break down their magic into 3 parts and talk about how each work with their small, tiny statures. Pixies are able to cast invisibility on themselves at will, and this spell works as greater invisibility so that you don't lose it when attacking or using actions. If you want to be a rogue that just latches onto the face of your enemies and just stabs them over and over and over again with your tiny little pixie dagger, then you're more than welcome to do that. Just remember that you'll most likely be doing a maximum of 1 damage per attack. 5th edition does make this a little squirrely. You can use finesse weapons. They don't take into account tiny weapons, small or tiny sized weapons. Using the Pathfinder rules is another way to balance out the infinite invisibility if your character is stuck doing the minimum 1 damage every time they attack, which is also kind of detrimental if you have a really, really low strength score. So it makes physical combat more balanced with the invisibility. But the bonus sneak attacks are always cool. See how that works? I was just winking there, but I forgot it was an audio medium. That was a shrug. Moving on. Stage 2 of these tiny monstrosities is their innate magic. Doable once per day for each spell, they are allowed a certain amount of spell-like abilities that can be related to their pixie dust or not. More on that in a minute. These spell-like abilities are charisma-based and include things the like of dancing lights, detect thought, dispel magic, detect good and evil. I bet pixies would like to be able to detect eagles, but that might be beyond them. Entangling roots, minor illusions, shield, confusion, fly, phantasmal force, polymorph, and sleep. A lot going on there. These are basically the bread and butter for existing as such a frail creature. They should have a firm hold on how to be stealthy and cunning and work their way through situations without being eaten or stuffed into a bottle for later consumption. Some of these do require concentration, and that will affect their ability to be invisible. So there is a trade-off to choosing to take an active role in the flow of combat or negotiations versus just staying hidden in the background. The next part of this, and yes, we're getting into the pixie stick portion of the video, where things start to get a little bit weird. Depending on the type of pixie you play, game edition you're playing, and basically what your DM will allow for options, you have to choose how to roll your pixie dust. I just got demonetized, didn't I? Pathfinder uses a system of allowing pixies to use their dust as a resource based on their charisma score as a means of applying their magic to arrows or a plethora of effects, such as sleep, memory loss, or charm spells, and smattering across other different illusory magics, with D&D seeing it removed and expanding their spell list as just a means of flavor and simplicity. I would argue that this could be completely ignored, or you could choose to really lean into the pixie dust angle for the character build. My thought being that instead of each spell only having one use per day, pixies could have a certain number of spell uses per day of their pixie dust and then choose which spell they're casting. And that would give you a little more variety. You can base that off of the number of spells equal to your charisma score. This could even bleed over to other spellcasting classes spells, using the dust as spell components or for extra spell slots, like a 1 plus the spell level uses consumed per day. Seeing as this is a commodity that will keep the pixies alive, I think that they can lean very heavily into their magic side. I could see this being used differently depending on which class you choose. Sprinkling the dust on a party member to give them your artificer bonus or spell effect, or maybe even allowing the pixie dust to recharge innate magic in others. This is why the pixies, being a tiny or diminutive creature, can also be a lot of fun because they aren't relying solely on their class-specific abilities. They are highly susceptible to death, but are basically just tiny magical batteries you can carry around and bottles. Oh, I get it now. Can we use pixie dust to heal people? Like, that's a thing you could do. Oh my god, this could break down into so many things. You could have a whole fairy-based economy. No, back on track. Back on track. They are small and powerful in the ways of fey magic, but they are not intended for a medium-sized human world. Seriously though, does anybody besides me play humans anymore? Is it just me? Am I the only one? Human cleric? That's not true. I play fighter a lot too. People playing pixies are going to be at quite a large disadvantage, mainly because they are mobile enough to move around and stealthy enough to break into anywhere, but they're not going to be able to do anything about it. Any pixie might get stopped by a basic door with a heavy latch, or taken down by a strong wind, or, a really excited cat. There's a little pounce, and you're dead. Trying to exist in a world as a singular pixie may explain why they spend a lot of their lives sucking the juice out of flowers and hiding in pumpkin patches. Always watchful of those indie-loving crows. Stop. This can even break down into finding armor and gear. While they should be cheaper and require less materials, it might be more difficult to find a smith willing to make you anything, let alone do business with you. This may not be the case if you're running a fey campaign, where they could be fey craftsmen or gnomes that deal with pixies and fairies all the time, but the campaign settings are always important when deciding what race you want to play, and talking with your DM about what you actually want to do with your pixie is very important. What you want to do with your pixie. I don't know what that means, but it doesn't sound right. I really do suggest that you lean into being a smaller, tiny creature. Choose a cool wing pattern, like that of a moth or a dragonfly, and just be free with it and use your pixie dust as much as you can. Like, don't bogart the good stuff and befriend a squirrel or something. Nothing says, hey, I'm a pixie, like riding around into battle on an armored squirrel against a plague of necromantic crows. Side note, necromantic crow campaign is going to be dope. The flavor is really going to make this pixie build. You could make a pixie rogue that just sneaks into people's houses and watches rich lords and ladies and then blackmails them later for money and flower juice. That didn't come out right. Or did it? Did that sound as weird as I thought it did. Maybe you have a bard that just hums creepy music into people's ears at night just to make them go insane. Or you could do the tooth fairy route and steal the teeth right out of an unsuspecting goblin's face. That might actually be its own video, though. We might have to do that another time. The possibilities are kind of endless when it comes to pixies. Thanks again for watching, everybody. Remember to like and share this video. If you're not subscribed, feel free to do so and do the clickety-clacky on the button and the bell down below. We do daily live streams and are currently working on expanding into a few new series, including the Bottomless Bag for homebrew items and the Artist's Arcana, which is where myself and a few other artists from the Discord draw characters submitted by the same Discord. Did I mention we have a Discord? Get on that. Also, link to the store down below if you want to get some sweet stickers or shirts or merch or whatever else we got on there. We got a lot of stuff going on. Thanks again to all the Patreon members who help make this channel possible. Remember to stay happy and healthy out there, and as always, keep your dice on the table. And be watchful. There could be pixies in your room right now. Just watching.
Trying tricks and spinning it.
What do you think your cat's looking at? They know what's up. Yeah. Weird, right?